Good morning. This is Ron. It is Wednesday, August the 15th. Welcome to Story Time. Good morning, and thank you very much. And this is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. Speaking to all you butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. And I've said in the past that there's depth to all the arguments that you see on television, here on the radio, and read in the newspaper today. The political arguments that behind the political argument is an ethical argument. Behind that is an epistemological argument, and behind that is a metaphysical argument. Ayn Rand has correctly made the point that if you're going to defeat an argument, you got to be able to know and understand it all the way down to its metaphysical roots. And the very root issue of metaphysics, which is the study of reality, is whether or not there is reality. Okay, in other words, reality is objectivity. Is there the same? Do you and I experience the same things at the same time, or are your experiences completely different, separate, and unique from my experiences? And so you might at first blush think, so what? Who cares? What difference does it make if my neighbor wants to think that he's completely different and unique? What do I care? The difference is, and the best way I can explain it is to illustrate with a story that sort of a story. You're going to the doctor, and when you go to that doctor, it is vitally important as to whether or not that doctor acknowledges reality. Absolutely critical. If you go to a doctor that is realistic and you present him with some complaints, the doctor is going to listen to your list of symptoms. Your doctor is then going to present you with some tests or conduct some tests. Might be just as little as checking your blood pressure, taking your temperature, pulse, etc., and then going to draw a conclusion and recommend a course of treatment based on what he has just done, which is realistic. He's checked with reality. He's checked your pulse, your vitals, all that stuff, all the objective stuff. If you go to a doctor that is not respecting reality, that is basically a socialist, then you're dealing with a doctor that believes everything is psychologistic in nature, everything is in your mind, and therefore everything is a matter of attitude. So the question for the doctor is going to be how to get you to change your attitude. He's not going to be concerned with taking your blood pressure and looking for objective measures. The doctor may do that. The idealistic doctor may do that, take your blood pressure, etc., but not because he wants to check your symptoms, but simply because he wants to he wants to convince you and that he's an authority, and he wants to convince you to be relaxed around him and to listen to what he's got to say. That's what a lot of the left does. They like to go to school not because they want to learn anything, but so they can be conferred with a degree and use that degree as a weapon, as a cudgel with which to hit people over the head, and as a way of establishing authority so they can exercise power. So a socialist doctor would look at the position between himself and his patient as one of power, that he is the authority figure. He is going to tell the patient what it is that they need to do, what's wrong with them, and the patient needs to obey. And so a lot of times it's going to be about attitude. There's nothing wrong with you. You just have a bad attitude. I used to get this from my foster parents all the time. My foster parents were socialists. And although they never once mentioned Karl Marx, nor did they mention any other Leon Trotsky or anyone else. They never talked about any of the Marxist dogma. They didn't talk about the proletariat or Workers of the World Unite or any of that. Never heard of a single socialist or Marxist slogan from them, but you knew they were socialist by the way they lived their lives. And one of the ways that you knew that was because you would go to them, present them with a complaint of some sort. You're tired, you're this, you're that, or the other thing. And inevitably, they would tell you, come on, get off of it, knock it off. You're just lazy. That was usually their go-to thing, is you're just lazy. You just have a bad attitude. Quit being lazy and everything will be okay. They wouldn't even check. They wouldn't even stop to check to find out whether or not you did present with any kind of symptoms at all. They just assumed that you had a bad attitude and that life was, again, about attitude. And the people that had good attitudes were going to have lead good lives morally and otherwise, and the people with bad attitudes were a drag on society and needed to be straightened out. So again, so if you go to a doctor and it's got that kind of, this is a socialist, has no respect for reality, they're not going to treat you. They're going to treat you like you're a subordinate, not like a patient. Whereas the realistic doctor, the doctor that does acknowledge reality, is going to treat you like a patient, is going to look to treat your find out what the symptoms are that you have, find the underlying cause of those symptoms, and treat it, and thereby make your life better. And as opposed to the lefty who's just going to assume everything is a matter of attitude, then and you just have a bad attitude and need to be straightened out. And you see a lot of that in used to see a lot of that in the former Soviet Union, where people that were dissidents were often put in psychiatric institutions. So they were not put in jail, but they're put in a psychiatric institution because the attitude was, if you're against the state or you're against whatever the state is doing, then you must be nuts. You must be crazy. There must be something wrong with you mentally. And you'll hear that a lot today, too, that there was a movement afoot where people were saying, Republicans should be, they've got mental problems. They've got mental issues. They are neurotic, or I don't think they went as far as saying psychotic, but they suggested that Republicans were neurotic and that Republicans needed psychiatric or psychological treatment. So, in any case, that's the point of why it's important to have an acknowledgement and a respect for reality in our society. When I come back, I'm going to be reading from the Ayn Rand Lexicon. Thank you very much. The Ayn Rand Lexicon is basically a glossary of the terms that Ayn Rand uses in many of her books, and we are at axiomatic concepts. So, axiomatic concepts is dealing with metaphysical reality, what I was just discussing before. So, axiomatic concepts. Axioms are usually considered to be propositions identifying a fundamental self-evident truth. But explicit propositions as such are not primaries. They are made of concepts, the base of man's knowledge of all other concepts. All axioms, propositions, and thought consists of axiomatic concepts. An axiomatic concept is the identification of a primary fact of reality which cannot be analyzed, i.e., reduced to other facts or broken into component parts. It is implicit in all facts and in all knowledge. It is the fundamentally given and directly perceived or experienced which requires no proof or explanation, but on which all proofs and explanations rest. The first and primary axiomatic concepts are existence, identity, which is a correlation or corollary of existence, and consciousness. One can study what exists and how consciousness functions, but one cannot analyze or prove existence as such or consciousness as such. These are irreducible primaries. An attempt to prove them is self-contradictory. It is an attempt to prove existence by means of non-existence and consciousness by means of unconsciousness. The underscoring of primary facts is one of the crucial epistemological functions of axiomatic concepts. It is also the reason why they can be translated into a statement only in the form of a repetition as a base and a reminder. Existence exists. Consciousness is conscious. A is A. This converts axiomatic concepts into formal axioms. Epistemologically, the formation of axiomatic concepts is an act of abstraction, a selective focusing on and mental isolation of metaphysical fundamentals, but metaphysically, it is an act of integration, the widest integration possible to man. It unites and embraces the total of his experience. The units of the concepts existence and identity are every entity, attribute, action, event, or phenomenon, including consciousness, that exists, has ever existed, or will ever exist. The units of the concept consciousness are every state or process of awareness that one experiences, has ever experienced, or will ever experience, as well as similar units, a similar faculty which one infers in other living entities. Since axiomatic concepts refer to facts of reality and not a matter of faith or of man's arbitrary choice, there is a way to ascertain whether a given concept is axiomatic or not. One ascertains it by observing the fact that an axiomatic concept cannot be escaped, that it is implicit in all knowledge, that it has to be accepted and used even in the process of any attempt to deny it. For instance, when modern philosophers declare that axioms are a matter of arbitrary choice and proceed to choose complex derivative concepts as the alleged axioms of their alleged reasoning, one can observe that their statements imply and depend on existence, consciousness, identity, which they profess to negate, but which are smuggled into their arguments in the form of unacknowledged, stolen concepts. It is worth noting at this point, let's see, that, that what the enemies of reason seem to know, but its alleged defenders have not discovered, is the fact that axiomatic concepts are the guardians of man's mind and the foundation of reason, the keystone, touchstone, and hallmark of reason. And if reason is to be destroyed, it is axiomatic concepts that have to be destroyed. It is only conceptual awareness that can grasp and hold the total of its experience. Extrospectively, the continuity of existence. Introspectively, the continuity of consciousness, and thus enable its possessor to project his course long range. It is by means of axiomatic concepts that man grasps and holds this continuity, bringing it into his conscious awareness and knowledge. It is axiomatic concepts that identify the precondition of knowledge, the distinction between existence and consciousness, between reality and the awareness of reality, between the object and the subject of cognition. Axiomatic concepts are the foundations of objectivity. It is only man's consciousness, a consciousness capable of conceptual errors, that needs a special identification of the directly given to embrace and delimit the entire field of its awareness, to delimit it from the void of unreality to which conceptual errors can lead. Axiomatic concepts are epistemological guidelines. They sum up the essence of all human cognition. Something exists of which I am conscious. I must discover its identity. Since axiomatic concepts are identifications of irreducible primaries, the only way to define one is by means of an ostensive definition. E.g., to define existence, one would have to sweep one's arm around and say, I mean this. And so that concludes that axiomatic concepts. The next one is going to be axioms itself, but I think if you have listened to this fairly carefully, you realize the importance of this, because this is what is attacked by the left each and every day. When you're getting into transgender issues and bathroom issues, you're involved in metaphysical, at the heart of it, metaphysical issues, which is, does reality exist? Are human beings born as either male or female, or is male or female a choice, an identity issue? Okay, and we know axiomatically that it is a matter of reality, that human beings are born as either male or female. Okay, so when I come back, an interview that haven't touched on for a little while with by Playboy of Bill O'Reilly. All right, thank you very much. And let me see if I can find the Bill O'Reilly doodad here. There it is. Okay, so yeah, Playboy interviewed, and this is from a series of like their 50th anniversary of the Playboy interview, something like that. And this is from a they did it in volumes, and this particular volume is dealing with different talk show hosts, David Letterman, Bill O'Reilly, et cetera, et cetera. And so this one is this chapter, as it were, is on Bill O'Reilly. And again, I'm going to expect that Playboy is going to treat Bill O'Reilly not much differently than they would Rush Limbaugh, Ayn Rand, or anybody else they saw as being not of the left. So, Playboy, going beyond your particular loathing for Hillary Clinton, do you at least agree you reserve your worst attacks for liberals? O'Reilly, no, for big shots. I killed New York Governor George Pataki because he wouldn't do anything about the charity snafu. He could have solved it in a day. I went after him. That's my job. No one knows how to put me in a box. The effect of the show is that nobody is safe. I don't make deals, and no one can get to me. Jesse Jackson tried to call and threaten. Pataki called and said, "Get him off of me." He called Roger Ailes, who respects me enough to say, "Look, if O'Reilly hasn't got the facts right, that's one thing. But don't call me up and say you don't like what he's saying." Believe me, I worked for CBS and ABC. I know how it works over there. It's a frightening thing to have an uncontrollable bull in the media ring. It's why Hollywood is going crazy. Playboy, you started a feud with actors such as George Clooney by saying that he and his peers were responsible for the fact that United Way had dispersed enough of the September 11 money. O'Reilly, and he and others said, hold me accountable for a telethon? How dare you? My view is, what are you? Special? No, you're not. If I asked for money from anybody and then saw that the money wasn't going where I said it was going to go, I would have the responsibility to do something about it. Come on. 4 of them got it. Goldie Hawn, Kurt Russell, Clint Eastwood, and the singer James Brown called. They said, we're as upset about this as you are. 4 out of 75. Clooney and his buddies are now whining, calling me names. O'Reilly, the black Irish guy. It makes them look stupid. Does it hurt me? I don't care what they say. Playboy, they claim you used the controversy to draw a larger audience to your show during sweeps. O'Reilly, idiots. We don't even have sweeps on cable. I don't need their approval. I don't want to hang around with them. That's another difference between me and most other broadcast journalists at my level. I don't care to hang around with these people. I don't want to be friends. I'm nice to them, I'm respectful, but I don't want to go to their houses. Most of them live to go to Le Cirque with Michael Douglas. I don't have any desire to do that. He might be an interesting guy, but I'm not going to kiss his butt and hope he'll throw me a crumb. I'd rather hang out with my buddies. And I want to interject real quick here is that's the thing I'm talking about. If this is true about Bill O'Reilly, then he's got more integrity than most Republicans, because most Republicans do exactly that. They will talk a good mess, and then they turn around and describe, talk a mess about the socialists and socialism and how they're ruining this country, and then turn around and say how Mr. Socialist is their buddy, their friend, and they've invited them over for Thanksgiving or for a barbecue at their house or something of that nature. Sean Hannity's particularly good for that. And so hooray for Mr. O'Reilly and his integrity, having the integrity to say, to realize you cannot be friends with people because he says, I don't care, I don't want to be friends, I'm nice to them, I'm respectful. What you can do, you can be friendly, but you can't be friends with somebody that is diametrically opposed to everything you stand for. Thank you, Ayn Rand. Playboy, some columnists have said your attack on the charity simply made people more cynical. One said that it is less likely that Americans will come together in a future crisis. O'Reilly, what am I, up with people? My job is to tell the truth, not to rally people to social causes. We've got plenty of other people to do that. Go on Larry King if you don't want to answer tough questions. For years, Larry King's big thing was that he could get all the big guns. He can because it's safe for them. When I started the show, I had to find a way to beat him. Nobody can come on the show with any agreements. Don't ask this, don't ask that. I need to see the questions in advance. That will never happen. Playboy, do your guests ask? They don't ask anymore, but they used to. We laughed. I asked what I wanted to ask. Playboy, are you suggesting that Larry King makes those deals? O'Reilly, I don't know what he does, but it's obviously a friendly venue for anybody famous. When I had Larry King on my program, I said, Larry, you're making it really difficult for me because you let these guys say whatever they want. He said he doesn't research the guests because it's their chance to give their views. But the problem is this: how do we know if they're lying? He had no answer. His mouth hung open. In my opinion, any television interviewer, Oprah Winfrey, Bill O'Reilly, Larry King, or Peter Jennings, is responsible to make sure that what is said on his or her program is true. Playboy, but as you said, you pay a price. You don't generally get the biggest name politicians and actors. Is it worth it? O'Reilly, is it worth it if I have to coddle them? If I can't ask them tough questions? I would never do that. So, yes, it's worth it. The fact is, we get more and more of them. One thing has changed since the election is that we now get all the Democratic candidates who may run for president. John Kerry, John Edwards, Joe Lieberman, they can't get on the factor fast enough because they saw what happened to Al Gore. Playboy, you said that Gore would have won the election if he had come on your show. O'Reilly, he would have. I took a lot of heat for that, but I was absolutely right. If Gore had come on this program and acquitted himself well, he'd be president right now. Florida is a huge factor audience. A lot of undecideds are down there. If he had come face to face with his toughest interrogator and done well, you're telling me that 500 people wouldn't have changed their minds? Maybe I'm wrong, but I think there was a pretty good chance. Playboy, why didn't he? O'Reilly, he was scared. Playboy, was he afraid he couldn't hold his own? O'Reilly, there's no question about it. His advisors were idiots. I pounded him for not coming on. I said he didn't have the cojones, and he didn't. The Democrats saw it, and now they can't get on the show fast enough. Kerry or Edwards or Lieberman will tell you they get their say on the show. They give as good as they get. Playboy, when can they get a word in edgewise? Do you admit you often interrupt your guests? O'Reilly, I only interrupt if someone says something that's factually incorrect or he wanders from the question. If someone starts to repeat himself, I come in. But I give him a window to answer. What I won't do is let someone spout rehearsed answers. Ashcroft knows his rehearsed answers aren't going to be accepted. Even Colin Powell, and I knew him well. When you go on the factor, you're no longer in control. They hate that. However, if you have it together and you're honest, you should be able to handle any question that's thrown at you. If you're a public servant, answerable to the public. You shouldn't try to be manipulating the information flow to the public. Just answer the questions. 100 years ago, these guys would have been hanged for a lot of the crap they throw out. People say the show is hostile, but I'm not hostile until you start to lie. Then I'm hostile. So, and that's where I'm going to leave this particular interview at this time. And when I come back, a joke or two from the New York City Cab Drivers Joke Book. Thank you very much. And the New York City Cab Drivers Joke Book is written by Jim Peach. So, let's see. A man's father is very, very old, and the son can't afford very good treatment for him. So the old man is in a shabby, run-down nursing home. One day, the son wins the lottery. The first thing he does is put his father in the best old-age home money can buy. His father is amazed by how beautifully run the place is. He can't get over it. On the first day, the old man is sitting watching TV, and he starts to lean a little bit to one side. Right away, a nurse runs over and gently straightens up the old man. A little later, the man is eating dinner, and when he finishes, he begins to tip a little to the other side. A nurse runs over and gently pushes him upright again. The son calls his father that night and says, "Well, Dad, how are they treating you there?" "It's a wonderful place," says the father. "The food is gourmet. They have color TVs in every room. The service is unbelievable." The son says, "Sounds perfect." "It is," says the old man, "but there's just one problem. They won't let you fart." Question: what do Italians call suppositories? Answer: innuendos. And on that note, we end another episode of Story Time. Thank you very much for listening. And until next time, have a great day.